Right, so demonstration for this evening. I'm going to be doing a captive cube fidget toy, or a cube inside a cube. I don't know if any of you have seen that done on the lathe before. You can do variations of it with the pillar drill, where you just cut a cube on the bandsaw and you just go down with the drill and then release a cube inside a cube. But it leaves marks on the internal cube where the brad points of the drill bits of the Forstner bits go down, and it's not very well finished. So I've been doing these for a few years. So it's just like a little fidget toy or a conversation piece. So we're going to give that a go this evening. So I'll just change my camera.
Oh yes, Steve. Seen this one before. You were right.
So tools I'm going to be using, I'm just going to be using a diamond parting tool, a roughing gouge, 1/4-inch skew, a modified box scraper that has two sides sharpened to a cutting edge. And then this is a homemade tool. I just wanted to show you this. This was made for me by a friend called Colin. And it's an angled cutter. This is a steel cutter, a tool steel, and it's just a side cutter. And then this cutter, you can make them yourself out of any small dowel tool steel, and then it's super glued into the main bar that's cut at 45 degrees. And it's super glued into the main bar. So you just warm that up with a blowtorch. It melts the super glue. You can pull that out, and then you can glue a new one in when it wears down. Now I've had that a few years. It's not worn down yet. And I just rub a diamond card and keep the edge sharp on that. You can use a carbide hollowing tool, or any kind of carbide angled hollowing tool. So that's what I'm going to be using this evening. And the chuck I'm going to be using is just a pin jaw chuck. Okay. Right, just to start with, I'm going to just show you quickly how to form a cube on a lathe that turns things round. So basically, we're gonna turn round stock square again on the lathe, but it's going to be a very it's going to be a very rough way of showing you, but I just wanted to show how you could do that if you didn't have a bandsaw or a chop saw or any way of cutting logs into squares. Just to show you can do it on the lathe. I'm going to be using goggles this evening because obviously I can't get my hat over my mic. I've got to go buy myself a lapel mic. But so I'm just between centers. This is a piece of beech. This is actually a piece of beech that Barbara Dill used in a demonstration, and I stole it at the Irish Woodturning Symposium. Or borrowed it, should I say. I'll give it back to her one day. So we're just going to turn this round like you would any other project. Now for speed, you can just, like I say, if you've got a bandsaw, you can just cut yourself a cube, an accurate cube, and you can just go from there. This bit of wood is green also. Okay, so it doesn't matter about size at the moment. We can work out the size of cube that we want as we go along. What you want is you want your width. You can just use your caliper and get your width. You don't have to measure it. Just get your width and make sure that you can get the same width into your length. Okay. And we're just going to mark that roughly there and there. This isn't going to be our final size, but it gives us a rough idea. There we go. And I'm going to get our parting tool. I'm going to bring those sides down. Now, the tools that I'm using this evening, you can adapt to suit your arsenal of tools. I've tried to keep it to tools that most people would have in the workshop. But where I use a skew, you can use a mini scraper or a hollowing tool. I'm just roughing this down, getting rid of the waste wood. And the only reason why we mark the width there is to make sure that we're not going to make our cube too small. We want to get the biggest cube we can from our material. Doesn't matter about this waste wood. We're going to cut it off anyway. Okay. So before I chop these off, just while it's still on the lathe, we're going to work out our center here. We'll do a quick measurement of how long it is. It's 80 mil. That was a good guess, wasn't it? So we're going to go 40 mil to the center. We'll just mark that center. Okay. And then I want two center points opposite, because we're going to flip this and put it between centers the other way. So what I want to do is, if you have an indexing system, you can do it that way. But another way you can do is, if you're using a step drive like this, it has 4 teeth. So what you can do is line it up so that your top tooth is here, and you can run a line across the top like this, and then flip it so the opposite tooth is up the way, pointing up. Now, there's a lot more accurate ways of doing this, but this is just for speed. And that'll give you roughly 2 opposite lines. Just a handy way of doing it. It's the same if you have a chuck. You can use the slots between the chucks to divide your workpiece up. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, just before I take my tailstock off and take the piece off, we're just going to cut these down to where we can break them off. Again, it doesn't matter about leaving little nubs or whatever, because we are going to be turning all this away. There we go. We'll take this off now. We'll take these off. Maybe. Didn't cut them off enough. We'll just get rid of it off completely. 1. And that's 2. Okay, and then we're going to flip it round, and our points that we just marked, we're going to put it between centers again. I'm doing this very quickly now. You can be a lot more accurate. Move the tool rest, because obviously we're longer now. And we're going to start taking the sides off. Okay. Now we can roughly work out how big our cube's going to be at this point. And we're probably going to get round about a 70 mil cube out of this. But we're going to just take each side down to start with. Again, with the parting tool. Just the width of the parting tool to start with, either side. All the way down to our live and drive center width. take a look at it. We can go a little bit more than that. I use the width of the parting tool a lot for measuring, to bring things down to size. There we go. I'm taking the same amount off each side. Now I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. There we go. So now we've got the makings of our cube. We've got our two sides here. So what we can do then is we can join our two sides across. Now, like I say, I'm doing this very quickly. You'd want to measure it and make it more accurate, but I'm just giving you the basics of how to do it. Okay. And now what we want to do is we want to flip it again. So we want to mark halfway on this point again. So we're 60 mil, we're going to mark 30 there, 60 mil, 30 there, and that gives us centers to flip it again. So I'm going to take them off, flip it round. Just like that. And now we're going to turn it away until we come to the lines that we just marked across. I want to just make sure that we're the same size. We should be. No, we're not. I should have took a little bit more off of them, but we'll square this off and we can. That's a good thing about this is we can keep flipping around until we get the right size. I'll take these sides off while I've got it in this orientation. You can see your lines as it's spinning. Okay, so now I've got my width there. I'm going to take that width and we're going to just swap it around again. And we're going to bring this width to match the one we've just done. I'll put rough lines where we want to go, one there, just so that I can see it. Like I said, if I'd have measured that, I would have known where I was, but it's okay. It's the end point we want to get to. Doesn't matter how we get there. Again, taking the same amount off each end. There we go. We're square there now. Let's take the little belly out of it that I have there. Okay, so we're square there now. Square and square, same size. So now what we want to do is we want to flip it around. I'm going to go between centers, but because we've got a square there now, we can go corner to corner, as you do with a square. Let me just mark it quickly. And you can find your centers very easily. I know I'm off camera at the moment, folks. I will get back to you in a second. It's just easier than.
You're fine.
So there you go. I've just gone corner to corner, and that finds my new centers. Put that between centers again, this way. And all we've got to do now is measure how big our cube is. It ended up about 52. But what we can do is, rather than measuring and trying to work it all out, we can start taking the sides down. At this stage, it doesn't really matter if we're central. But it would be nice if you can keep your center marks that you've made for when you start doing the cube inside a cube. So you would measure from the center out to get the cube. I'm just eyeballing it just for this demonstration, just to show you how to get to a cube. So we're going to go there, and we're almost there. So this is going to be our mark here and here. Now, like I say, it's a lot easier to do it on your bandsaw. But if you don't have a bandsaw, they're an expensive tool to buy. Now, obviously, you could do it with a handsaw too. Or you can get your local store to cut it, maybe. Just going to take a little bit more off this side. Pretty good there now. I won't spend too much more time on this because I want to get to doing the cube in a cube. And then it's just a matter of cutting off all your nubbity nubs. Now this, like I said, this is wet wood. So we all know that wet wood doesn't like being cut with a saw.
Kind of binds up, doesn't it?
Yeah. That was quite a big, I could have turned that nub down a bit smaller, but it is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, Steve, nobody nubs are really annoying.
Nubbity nubs are very annoying, especially wet nubbity nubs. Anyway, I'll cut this last small one off. I won't cut that. Well, do you know I will? 1 second. I'm going to cheat. Pretend I'm cutting it by hand, okay? That's not a bandsaw you can hear, honest.
Brum.
And there you go. There's a cube. Turned on a lathe. So anyone that says you can't turn square stuff on a lathe is a liar. Okay. Now, obviously, you'd sand that and get it ready for prep and to the next stage. So I'll show you how to actually do the cube inside a cube now. I'll just tidy up here a little bit. If you have any questions on that part of it, please fire away.
None posted in chat.
Cool. Okay, so once we get our cube, we need to mark all 6 sides and find our centers. I just demonstrated that off of camera, but I'll do it on camera. It's more for the newbies that aren't sure how to find the center of a square piece of wood. You literally just go from corner to corner. I've just left this one off just so that I can demonstrate. As long as you've got a square, that will find your centers. And you need to find the center on all 6 sides of your cube. Okay. This is like Blue Peter. I don't know if you've got Blue Peter in the States, but used to have a show called Blue Peter in the UK years ago, and used to have one prepared. So I've prepared this one. I've put all my drive center marks into it just to speed it up. We're going to get it between centers. Just like that. This is an 80 mil cube. I know that because it says so just there. And now we're going to work from the side. Now, obviously, as Captain Eddie was saying earlier, as long as you can hold a piece of wood, you can work on a piece of wood on the lathe. But we need to form a way of holding this so that we can cut all 6 sides, which is a bit tricky when you're between centers. Now, what you could do, depending on the size of your cube, it's a controversial way of holding a cube. You can make yourself a square jig, which is just a round piece of wood that you've cut a square out of the same size as your cube. And as you tighten up your chuck, you put slots in the corner, and as you tighten it up, it holds the cube in place. The controversial way is you can take 2 jaws off of your chuck. You can wind your chuck out and you can hold it on 2 sides of the cube. Now, the real safety turners would say don't do that. I have used a chuck with just 2 jaws for years, and I have never, touch wood, had an issue of it letting go. As long as you know your limitations, you can use the chuck just like that. But it's personal preference, and you do whatever you want to do. This is the way I'm going to demonstrate. It's the safer way of doing it. Is we're going to cut in the side. Let me move this. Metric sizes. I've gone millimeters. I just see that pop up in the chat there.
No, it's all good. 25 mils, 1 inch. It's easy to convert.
Yeah, 80 mils, probably around about 3 inches, I think, not far off of 3 inches.
Yeah.
So now we're going to form a mortise in this side. And this is where my 1/4 inch skew, my favorite tool is this tool, the 1/4 inch skew. I absolutely love this tool. It's a 1930s vintage tool, and I just love it. So we're between centers, we're locked down. And now we need to make a mortise. Now I'm just going to start cutting. So what I do is I cut in with the top point. I just push in. I wonder if I can get this camera to come round. Sorry now, folks, but I just want to see, can I get you to actually see what I'm doing with the tool? There we go. So I'm going straight in and I'm cutting a groove. I know it's hidden behind the thing. I might be able to get, let me do the overhead maybe. So I'm going straight in with the tool and I'm cutting a groove like this. And then I'm swapping the tool round and I'm going flat in and I'm cutting out a mortise straight in, just like that. Okay. Now I have a jig here that I've made. This is a 35mm jig. Just a piece of plywood. It's 35mm this way and it's 20mm this way. And this is going to be my depth. And obviously twice that depth will tell us what size cube we're going to have in here. So if we're going in this way, and then this way, our cube is going to be this distance minus the 220mm depths. So our cube will be that size with inside that cube. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, obviously we're going to be going from all directions. And I need to make my mortise 35mm wide to give me enough room to work in. So I'm going to come in here. Now for the first one, it's kind of eyeballing to get to know that I'm about right. As long as I'm roughly right for my first mortise that I can hold it, I should be good. And I get right in with my skew there, get a bit of depth, clean it out. And that's good enough. Okay. And then I'm going to do another one. So obviously we need to do 3 of those before we put our chuck on, because otherwise we're going to be doing hollow, chuck, take the chuck off, hollow, take the chuck off, and that. So cut these first. Okay. So obviously that side is going to allow me to hollow the opposite side. So now I need to do this side. I'll find me center mark. Oh, there it is. And I need to do the same thing again, this side. In with my skew. Swap it round. Go in. That noise you're getting is a vibration.
Oh, we can't hear it.
Oh, okay. There's no noise. There's no vibration. Everything's good.
All smooth turning, buddy.
So I want to get this roughly to size. We can open it up once we're working on it. All I need it to be is the size of my pin jaws that's going to hold it. And it's good to leave the nubbity nub in the middle, as we call it, because that's always going to allow us to center up the piece again when we put it into the chuck. That's that one. I want to make sure that I'm roughly the right size. I am. And then we need to do one more. So we've got this one, we'll do that side. This one, we'll do that side. And now we need to flip it. So we'll put one in this side so we can do that side. Work smarter, not harder. When I first did these, I was doing one, taking the chuck off, swapping it over and doing it. And it was tedious. So again, straight in and start cutting my mortise. You only need it deep enough for the jaws to hold for now. A little bit more. There we go. Final check. We're good. Okay, so now we can take out our step live drive and put that to the side. And we'll put our pin jaws in. All right. The other thing I want to do is I want to change my live center, because I have a cone that I've made. It's actually one that I use for my spheres, for holding spheres. It's just a cone, but it fits onto this drive center, just like this. And it will help me to make sure that I'm center once I turn away these nubs. I'm not gonna know how to hold these exactly square on the chuck. So this just acts as a cone, fits into here, and it helps me to center up. But for now, I'm going to take that cone off and just use the drive. And we're going to go into our first mortise that I just turned. We're going to bring our tailstock up. I'm going to push this. Put a little bit of pressure so we know we're center. And we're going to tighten this up. Now, because I've gone in with a skew, it's tapered just slightly the wrong way. If normally you would dovetail it and you'd go in this way, but because it's a bit tight to get in here, I've cut it as much as I can. And what I do is I tighten the chuck so that it grips in to this wood and holds it where I need it to be. I've never had really a problem with it letting go, to be honest with you. Once you've got a hold on it, it's pretty good. It'll probably prove me wrong tonight, as it always does on a live. Okay, and then we're going to take away our tailstock. Bring up our tool rests, because we're going to be using our skew on its flat. Give it a push and a pull to make sure that you are held, you know, just be safe. And we're going to get that spinning. Yeah, I just seen that I made a tool for cutting those dovetails with the tailstock in place. Yeah, you can do. But like I say, the way I'm doing this is for folk that have just the basic tools, other than the angle tool that I'm going to be using. But again, you can use hollowing tools. You could even get it with the skew if you take your time. Okay, so we're just going to start cutting our mortise out here. Now, the reason why I like using this skew, let me get rid of this tailstock right out of my way. A second. The reason why I like using the skew for doing this is because I'm pushing against the headstock for cutting. I'm not putting any pressure sideways, therefore having a chance of it flipping off the chuck. I'm pushing against the chuck with my cut, reducing the chance of getting a catch and pulling it off the chuck. Okay, so now this is where we need to be accurate. I'm going to bring in my my template. It's a little bit wider than this cube, but that's okay. I can eyeball it up and get a rough size of where I'm going to be. I'll bring that down here, put a mark here. Just put it on my tool rest and hold it and spin it. We can get accuracy once we start getting close. Sneak up on the line. Don't have this spinning when you're using a template like this, because if you put it in, it can flip it around and it can twist your wrist. Always turn your machine off. There we go. We're good there. Now, it's only really this outside edge that we have to worry about being accurate. That will make sense a little bit later on. Now we'll just check for depth. Still a ways to go. I really do love the skew for doing this. Okay. Just a couple more mil to go in there. So what I do is I don't go right down to my depth with the skew. Sometimes you can get a nice finish on the bottom with the skew. I've gotten better over the years to be able to do that. What I do now is I'll get almost to my depth. I'm just a couple of mil off my depth there. And that's when my box scraper comes in. I showed this before. It's a modified box scraper. It's 90 degrees here. This edge is a cutting edge, and this top edge is a cutting edge. So you're cutting on both edges, and you can get a nice square cut in the bottom, and you can also get a nice clean cut by twisting the angle slightly. Now, I'm going to bring my tool rest down just slightly because this is a slightly thicker tool than the skew, obviously. And so I'm going to come in here, put the light on. You might be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm coming straight in. I'm going to just bring the corner to the center and start it cutting. Bring it across, then tilt the tool, and it should cut a nice 90-degree cut. Now, with this, that's not important. The only important thing is getting a nice clean cut on what will be the face of the inner cube, which is a nice cut on there now. Now, I'm not going to do any sanding tonight. That's perfect depth now. I'll just show you on the overhead. You can see that slides in there. We're touching inside there, and our outside is touching on the side of the box. So that's the right depth. It's the right width.
Hey, Steve, real quick, while you got your jig there, what's the dimensions on the jig again?
On the jig, okay, so it depends. Obviously, it depends on what size cube you're going to be using.
Yep.
Okay, but for this one, this is an 80 mil. I've got 80 mil written. No, I haven't on this one, but so obviously, if you make a cube too small inside, it's going to fall out of the hole that you make, right? So you need to make your hole smaller than the cube inside, all right? But we will be undercutting, which is the trick to this. So really you have to work it out to the cube that you use. But if you make the outer width of the jig the same width as your cube that you're going to be working with, it makes everything easier to find centers. Okay. So find the center. You can see I've got the center marked on that. So as long as you've got your center mark and the same distance from there to each side, you'll be accurate. And then depth wise depends on what size of cube you want. So obviously twice the depth of your jig away from the overall width of your cube is going to give you your internal size. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so the face of your inner cube is the important thing. Now you can go in and you can sand that now. Don't worry about sanding the edge here because we're going to be doing more work on that in a little while. Sand this front edge, okay? Now, Dane, make sure you shout to me about time because this is quite a timely project. So I can jump. I've got another one made, so I can jump to kind of the finishing stages if we need to. Okay.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, can I just say that Steve has refined this?
Yeah, there's a lot of years gone into refining this. It was very haphazard when I was first used to do it. I'm just going to move that light out of my way just while I center this up. I'm glad you noticed that, Wayne. I was a newbie when I first did it. This project actually was a challenge from my tattoo artist who does my tattoos in the UK. I'm just finding the center using my nubbity nub. And then I'm going to tighten up. So obviously I'm doing opposites. So I'm using my full mortise that I've cut now, my full depth hole. So I get a better hold on this now. I don't need to cramp it up really tight. It will hold. Yeah, so this was a challenge. He saw a YouTube video of a metal worker using a metal lathe to make a cube inside a cube. And he messaged me and he said, bet you can't make one of those on your lathe. And me being me, I said, bet I can. So I did. And it's kind of stuck. And I've made a few of these now. I've sold quite a few. And they're nice little fidget toys. And they're conversation starters. If you've got it up on the mantelpiece, people say, how the heck did you do that? So it's just rinse and repeat now with this. We're going to turn this away. Get rid of my nubbity nub. I want to get my overall width first. We're not far off of that. This is why I turned it slightly smaller for the chop jaws to start with, so that I can refine it once we get a good proper hold on it. That should be about right. Yeah, we're good. Okay, here we go again. So we're going to find our depth now. Now, if your cube is slightly out, if it's not turning perfectly square, don't worry about it. You're still going to end up with a cube inside a cube. And the only way you're going to know that the inner cube doesn't line up perfectly with the outer cube is if you hold it exactly No one's ever going to do that. You'll never know that the inner cube doesn't quite match with the outer cube. As long as it doesn't come out of the holes that you've turned, you're good. Now you can have a lot of fun with these cubes as well. You can do this with a sphere too. You can make a cube inside a sphere. You can do a sphere inside a sphere. Now that does need specialty tools like the spring-it tools. Almost there. But you can also shape these cubes so you can turn them into a star. So you could turn in, while you've got in this position, you can turn a cove like this and like this and like this, and you can make it into a star. So you end up with your corners being points. So you have a star with a cube inside. So you can do all different kinds of designs with these. You can go as deep as you want, or as, you know, you can dome it and take the corners off and end up with kind of a weird looking, I mean, you could even sphere it on the outside if you want. Once you've got a cube, you can turn it into a sphere, but you have to be careful you don't come into your holes. But there's all sorts of ways, and then you can embellish it with pyrography and stuff like that. There's loads of things you can do with these. They're a lot of fun as a fun little hobby project. Almost there now. Okay, so I'll get my box scraper in there again now. Do a clean up. Too high, that's why it's not cutting. When your tool tells you something, listen to it. See how we do it for depth. And when I first did these, I did it all by guesswork. I never had a jig at all, but I found with accuracy, it's a lot easier to work out the parting off of your inner cube. There we go, that should do. All right, we're perfect depth there again. So now we'll take it off again. And we flip it around to one of our original shallower mortises. So again, we have to make sure that we've got a good hold. Find our center before we tighten it up. I tightened it up a little bit too much. At least that shows that we're getting a good hold on it. Push it well onto the chuck before we tighten it up, and then start. Now you need a good piece of wood with no cracks in it, because you're using this on expansion mode. And if you've got any cracks or weaknesses in the wood, because you're slowly taking away the body of material, any cracks in the grain are going to let go when you put a jaws into expansion mode, because you're putting it under pressure. So just be aware of the type of material you're using when you're turning these, or anything that you're using jaws in expansion mode. If you're doing bowls with a mortise on the bottom, make sure that you have no cracks or voids that are going to split under pressure. Okay, here we go again. You'll notice I'm turning my lathe off when I adjust my tool rest as well. Now, the other thing you've got to take into consideration when you're doing this, because it's a cube, your grain orientation is going to be in all different directions. You're going to be cutting some end grain, you're going to be cutting some side grain. So the cut is going to be different. It won't feel the same. It will feel a bit odd sometimes. You'll think, well, why is my tool not cutting as well as it was on the other side? It's because you're going into end grain or side grain, depending on what tool you're using. I'm just giving myself a reference line to work to. I always put an X if what I'm cutting, if I've made a slight mistake and I've marked it that it's going to be slightly bigger. It reminds me that when I get to the line, not to go to the line, always stop a little bit short and check my width again. Almost there. A lot of stopping and starting with this, but you need to be accurate. All right, I've got my width now. Now let's do our depth. So I'll do this one a little bit faster. Now I'm sure there's different ways of doing this. You're probably all sitting there as well thinking, well, you could do it this way, you could do it that way. That's the good thing about doing these projects is you see one person do it and then you adapt or improve the technique. Okay.
Yeah, I hear all the inner rumblings of why ain't you using a Forstner bit? It'd be so much quicker.
Yeah, it would be.
But he already
But
said why he wouldn't use a Forstner bit, because it would leave
Well,
marks he didn't want.
exactly.
exactly. Yeah. Now you could go to a certain depth with your forcing a bit and then clean out the rest. But when you get used to using your tools, to be honest with you, it's a lot faster to do it like this than to keep putting your Jacobs chuck in, drill it, take the Jacobs chuck out, clean it up with the tools. You're as well to just do it like this. I very rarely use a forcing a bit when I'm hollowing, even boxes and stuff like that. I just find it a lot quicker to use the tools. But again, that's personal preference. Okay, so that's that side done. I'm gonna swap it around. What sort of time do we have, Danes? Just so that I know in my own
Well,
head.
do you have one ready to start carving the box out?
So I've got one ready that I've pretty much done.
Oh, okay.
That I can show how to part off. But what I was going to do is just do a couple of sides of showing how to carve the box out, and then on this, and then we'll finish off the other one.
Okay.
I mean, how much time do we
Oh,
have?
we got plenty of time. We got the rest of the program if need be.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Not a
no
problem.
worries.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm mesmerized. I'd love to see it all.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm good to stay and do it
Same here.
and get it.
Sounds good. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, I've got
Okay. Cool. That's good. All right. So we're going to tie again. We're into our finished depth. So I can just tighten that up with less aggression. Go. I think the first live that I did with this on YouTube, I think I was live for something like 4 hours or 5 hours doing one of these because it was the first time I'd done it. And I think I had like 30 people that stayed the whole the whole time watching me do it. So it was
I
cool.
think
But
I was.
yeah, Wayne was there definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I was.
I'm not sure how many people use a skew like this to hollow. It's kind of something, because I'm self-taught and the tools I started with many moons ago on my homemade drill lathe that I had, the tools that I used were sharpened screwdrivers and adapted wood chisels and a Milwaukee 110 volt drill that had forward and reverse, a plywood headstock that I made myself that slid up and down a plywood bed.
Now, if anyone hasn't followed or doesn't follow Steve, I think he still has a video up there.
Wayne, you're bumping Steve off the camera.
Oh, sorry.
Please keep it. Please, we need to keep the commentary down so Steve can get through with the demo. Okay.
Yeah.
You can fire away when we're done, Wayne. No bother at all. Okay, we should be pretty much close to depth on that one. We are just a couple of mil off that one, so we'll go to the scraper again. Clean up again, like I said, cleaning up the face of the inner cube. Not worried about the side of the hole. And when you're sanding, you would sand your inner cube face now. I mean, you can do it at the next stage as well. And you'd also sand your outer faces here. Now, the way I sand these is I get a block of wood, I put sandpaper on it, and I hold it so that it keeps it square. If I'm keeping a square cube, obviously, if I'm shaping this, I'd also do my shaping now to turn it into a star to get the right depths and everything. So you do your shaping at this stage as well, just while you've got it held in the chuck. Okay, so I think we were good on that one. We were, yep. Now we're going to swap it around. I think we've got 2 more to do, and then we can start forming our inner cube. Again, leave it loose. Now it's very repetitive, but it is essential that you get all your depths the same. You have to be accurate, because when you start forming your cube inside, it's the parting off at the end to release the cube. You'll have thick corners that you've got to try and carve off and thin corners, and it just won't be sitting right inside the cube to get the tool in and cut it off. To part this inner cube, you should be able to just use the little, I'm just using the little 1/4 inch skew and just use it as a carving chisel and just release the corners. But we'll show you that in a second. Again, we're into the shallow mortise again here, so I'm putting plenty of pressure on to make sure I'm held. Getting my tool rest as close to the piece as I can. I don't want too much overhang when I'm using the skew. Because it's thin, you'll get a lot of vibration. Yeah. Again, just using my reference to get a rough idea where I am. Okay. Perfect. Like I say, if you're a carbide user, you can do this no problem with your carbide. You'll be doing this with a square scraper. The only thing that I would advise if you're using carbide is to just slightly twist your tool and get a nice shear cut on your inner box rather than just going straight in and scraping it, because you'll get tear out, especially on the end grain part section of the box, of the cube, sorry. Now these look really, really nice. If you use spalted wood, they look really cool, but obviously spalted wood is a little bit softer. So as you're working it, you might have to stabilize it with CA glue as you're cutting each side. And also you could laminate the wood in such a way that your internal cube is a different color to your external cube. Now, I'm not clever enough to work that out. Well, I probably could. It's just I'm lazy and couldn't be bothered. I don't have the patience for segmenting and laminating. There we go. That should be the depth. Yep, perfect. So we've just got one more side to do. And then I can show you how to start forming and parting the inner cube. I mean, we're already forming the cube inside, as you can see. But the idea is that we've got to start finding the corners of that internal cube and part it off from the external cube. Now, I suppose what I should have done is I should have used a 2x4 to do this and killed two birds with one stone.
Well, there was some discussion on that.
Back off, it's my idea.
Right?
Okay, so we're in our deep mortise again. So I just have to nick up my Jaws.
More aptly, this will qualify you for it regardless of it being beach.
Okay.
Just because you went from round back to square.
Sometimes those little nubbly nubs that you have left there can fight you. So it's always a good idea to take them away from the outer to the center, because the center is spinning a little bit slower. Your tool can get a bit bound up if you try and push your tool through into that small piece of wood, and it can cause you a few issues. Using the skew anyway. Other tools maybe not so much. Now you could do this with a gouge. Not a problem. Just like hollow in a box. Right, that's our width. This is our last one for doing our depth. Oops. Now it's funny because I'll show you in a second from the top. When it's spinning, it actually looks like a sphere on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do a lot of multi-axis, I just love the way the wood acts on the lathe as it's spinning. Some of the pieces I'd be turning, they look as if they're spinning backwards,
Indeed.
and they almost dance on the lathe. It's really cool. That's kind of one of the things about multi-axis that I really enjoy. Okay, perfect with our depth there now. All right, okay, so now we're going to do our next stage. I'm going to bring this camera around and zoom it in, because I want you to see what I'm doing with this. And we'll probably put a little bit of light on the on action, so we can also see what we're doing. The dreaded shadow. Okay, so to start with, again, I'm going to be using my skew. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start doing an undercut, which means that I'm going to keep my outer surface the same size, but I'm going to start expanding the hole and making a cone shape going into the inside. Okay. So again, I'm using my skew. I'm going flat in here, and I'm going to start at the bottom. I don't want to take too much out at the top here, because obviously if I start pushing that in at an angle, I'm going to get more and more wood that I'm trying to take away with one cut. So I want to start at the bottom, just touching on my bottom box, and then come back and take the wood down to my inside box space. And we're going to form an undercut. And you really can get quite far in. In fact, with some of these boxes, I've done the whole lot with the 1/4 inch skew. I've not had to use the angled tool at all. There you go. That's pretty much as far as I can get in there without damaging my inner box. Now with that one, I'm not going to go any further. I'm not going to put my angle tool in yet. I'm going to flip around and I'm going to go to the side. So I'm just going to flip it 90 degrees so that I'm cutting into the same sides, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to take the cube, take it off, and I'm going to flip it. This is the one we were working on, facing the back of the lathe. And I'm going to flip it that way. Now, if I was just to tighten that up now, that's going to be out of square. Well, it's not too bad, actually. But you could be just slightly out of square and you're going to get a wobble. And that's going to mess up your cuts inside here. So this is where the cone comes in handy.
Steve, how deep was that cut that you made?
So I went to the face of the cube that I've already cut.
Right?
Okay. But I just went at an angle.
Yep.
And widened
how
it as
far
far as I could with my without my skew, the back of my skew, without the heel of the skew. Obviously, I'm going in like this. I've gone in as far as I can without the heel of my skew digging into the front face of the box and marking it. So I've gone in as far as I could with that angle and then just straightened up. It doesn't matter with that first cut yet. What we want to do is with these first two, we want to work out our gauge for all the rest. So we want to break through and see daylight. So I've gone as far as I can with my skew on that side, and I'm going to do the same with this. And hopefully we should break through into daylight and we can work out then how much we've got to take away with the angle tool then. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put my cone over my live center now. This is just a cone that fits on top of there. And I'm going to bring it up. Make sure that this is loose. And I'm going to push that into place so it's nice and tight against the chuck. And then I'm going to tighten up. Just so it's nicked and held. Then I'm going to pull this away. And that should be centered. And now we're going to do exactly the same as we just did. Start at the bottom, start taking away small cuts, finishing at their face every time. We don't want to turn our inner square into a square or a cube that's got rounded off edges. We want to try and keep it as cube-like as possible. Now, I'm starting to see daylight there. And you're probably seeing daylight there too. If you just look just above the tool rest, just here, you can see light showing. You can see the lathe showing behind it.
Yep, it's blinking. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that's telling me that I've got the right depth. I'm starting to cut the right depth. And we've got our two sides starting to cut into each other. Again, I'm going to go as far as I can safely without damaging the front face. I'm bringing my tool round so that heel isn't touching on the inside of the inside cube. you can pretty much see the cut when you're working inside. There we go. We'll turn that off, and we should have like a slot in here. You can see it. Can you see it? Yeah, just there. Okay, and that is the edge of our cube that you're seeing. So now what we need to do is we need to determine where the corner of our cube is going to be. And that's where the angle tool comes in. I've gone in kind of as far as I can safely with my skew. So this, you could use a hollowing tool like this, the carbide hollowing tool. Yep, you can get HSS stock on Amazon, exactly, and you can make your own tools. What I used to do with these when I first started doing it is I had Allen wrenches, Allen keys. I think you call them Allen wrenches in the States. And I used to just make a hook tool out of that. And I put a handle on it and sharpen it down to a fine point. Now, the only thing with the Allen wrenches is that they're not very toughened steel, and you have to sharpen them quite often. So now we're going to come in here. Oh, actually, I need to just adjust my height with this tool because it's quite a thick bar, and I need to come out a little bit. Always cutting on center. And now what I'm going to do with this tool is, I'll just show you on this front face, is I'm going to follow the front face of the inner cube, and I'm going to slowly clean away this inner corner down here, taken away from the inner edge of this and the front edge of the cube, trying to keep it as square as I can and making a dip. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make that slot to the point where you're forming a corner. Now, it's guesswork on the first two. You might have to go back on the first two, but once you've got these, you should pretty much know where you're going. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to follow the front face of my inner cube, and I'm going to start taking away a little bit at a time. Now, this tool, because it's homemade, you have to find the sweet spot cutting. Doesn't take long. There we go. Okay. Now our gap's not going to get much bigger in there until I go into the other side, but I can see that I've cut that down quite a lot. I can pretty much imagine where my, let me see if I can get that there. Let me see if I can get this so that you can, there we go. So I can imagine where this cube is going to, because I can see roughly where this edge is, I can come over here and I can draw a line on my inner cube to work out roughly where my corners are going to be. And I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to take just a tiny little bit more out, but I'm quite happy with the depth that I have there. There we go. I'm happy with that now. And now I'm going to swap back to the one that I've cut before, which is this one. I'll flip that back and put it there. Now, just for speed, I'm going to just eyeball this without bringing my dome up each time, because that does take time. I'm just going to eyeball that we're spinning quite true. And and go with that. But I would advise, if you're doing this, to bring your tailstock up and center it each time, just to get accuracy. Because it's a pin jaws, there can be a little bit of movement. Now, with this cut, you've got to be a little bit careful, because that gap's going to slowly open up and your tool could go into that gap and you could get a catch. So just be aware of that. Now, I know that from the last one I just did, the other side, my bar was touching near enough on this front edge. So I know how deep I was going. So I'm just going to match that. Trying to find that sweet spot for cutting. Now I felt a little bump there, which tells me that my hole is a nice size now there. Yeah, I'm very happy with that now. The size of hole that we've formed there, you can see that now. You can imagine
yeah.
the corners of our cube appearing there now. So I'm just going to take out a little bit more of that one. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now, what you can do is I've cut like a trench at the back there. What you could do if you want is you can refine that, and you can curve your cuts in here and kind of make it that this is nice and curved and shaped. I'm not going to do that tonight, but what you can do is you can get your gouge in there or your skewer then, and you can make that transition not as abrupt as I have it there, just to make it kind of curved in nicely. Take your time and get your sandpaper in there and clean it all up. But just for the sake of the demonstration tonight, I'm not going to go into all that detail. So now we're going to flip this around again. How are we doing for time, Dane?
You're doing good.
Good. Okay, cool.
We'll see it through.
Cool. So now I've got two and I've cut into here. I'm going to flip it again 90 degrees. So we're going to get our third cut in and we can start forming our corner. Again, I want to get that so it's spinning as true as possible without messing about with the tailstock. That will do for tighten up enough to be doing this. Okay, again, with my skew that I've put down somewhere over here. We're a little bit off there, but not enough to cause an issue. Now, what will happen is, as you go into these, the daylight will come quite quickly. That one's already punched its way through. Because you know what depth you're working at now. And stop that now. We've got daylight and we can start seeing where our corner is forming. And you can see there now Let's see if I can get that to show. You can see the corner starting to form there. Now that we've got the 3 sides cleaned away. So I'm just going to take a little bit more out with my skew. And then go in with our angle tool again. Don't get complacent and not bother adjusting your tool rest. That's when mistakes happen and you end up wasting all that time getting it right just for a lazy split second. Now I can feel that that tool's got dull now because it's not a carbide tip. It's just machine metal. It dulls a lot quicker. So I just get my diamond card, 300 grit, and I just put a burr back on that cutting tool. Only takes a second. But sharp tool's a happy tool. And there you go. I can feel the burr on that again. And instantly I can feel that cutting a lot better. But don't forget, it can be a little bit more aggressive when it's cutting. There we go. Okay, good. I've got a tiny little corner there now. You spin it around there. I wonder will this camera pick up on it actually? Let me just try the. Let me just zoom in on that for a second and it might.
Can you zoom in anymore?
It won't zoom any because it's a webcam, that one, so I'm very restricted on how it will zoom in. But it's probably about the light. Oh, there you go. You could probably just see the corner that's been formed there now. I've got just a tiny little bit left on the corner.
Oh yeah, yep, I can see it now.
So all I do now is I bring my skew in along the face of my cube and I just cut away that little divot. Now you're not going to see me doing this, and I just take away the last little bit using this as a carving chisel while it's still in the chuck. Because if you're trying to hold this and do it, it's difficult. Okay. And I can come over the top here. Might get it with the overhead camera. I can come over the top here now with this one. This is why we do the 3 together. And I can carve this top one. And then I can come on this one at the front and carve that one and take away. And now I've actually broken that corner away now. So that cube is now free. I'll see if I can show you on this one now. It's hard with the light, but that cube is actually free now in that corner.
Yeah.
And so that's how you release the corner. So now I've done that, I'm going to flip it around again. Get my chuck key out of my pocket. And I'm going to go to another side. It's spinning roughly around. That's good enough. So you can see now why we weren't too worried about these inner walls. Because we're cutting it away, but we've got a nice smooth surface on our cube. Okay, tool rest up. And go again with the skew. We've got a little bit of a wobble on that one, but we'll pretend it's not. And straight away, I've got daylight showing. Because we've got accuracy with our depths, everything's lining up nicely. That's good. So now I know that when I bring my angle tool in again, I'm going to form that corner again. Now I didn't adjust my tool rest there. And I can feel the difference in the cut. I'm just going to bring my tool rest down just a little bit more because I don't want to get a catch and end up pulling that cube out of the chuck. Nice, there we go. Okay, I can feel that that's pretty much where I want to be. Yep. And that's released another one, so I can just get my skew in again, clean up that corner, and release another corner. And that's why accuracy is key with this, with your depths. Now, when I first started doing these, it was all guesswork with the depths and stuff like that. And it was taking me ages to carve the last corner of the box off because I was leaving too much, and it was different widths and it was different sizes, and it was a nightmare to get right. So okay, that's another corner release there now. And now we can flip again. I think time-wise, we could probably do this whole cube without... I think we're good to... If everyone's happy to stick with it.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
I'm good with it.
It is a satisfying moment when the cube parts from the cube.
It's kind of like watching NASCAR.
I wouldn't know.
Some folks are waiting for the big crash. Others are waiting for the finish.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I'm
Left
tired,
turn.
holding my breath.
Left turn, left turn.
Now, speaking of left turn, you can turn these in reverse as well, so that you're working from the front and you can see where you're cutting. It can be easier.
I actually have a tool that is designed to be turned in reverse for just this thing.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm pretty good there. Again, just going to go in with my angle tool just to take the last little bit out. But you can see once you get all your depths accurate, it goes quite quickly, this cleaning out process. When you start seeing shavings flying out from all the sides, then you know you're doing something right. A little bit more. Ooh. Now, obviously, you take your time, you do your sanding, you'd clean up all these edges to get to so everything's nice and clean. That's ready for parting off again now. So I can take that last little bit out. Now, the reason why we do the last little bit with the chisel is because if you go too far, you will actually turn the corner of the cube off. And you'll have rounded edges on the cube. There we go, that one's parted off. Now we've got two now that we can part off here. Because we're cleaning more and more sides away. There we go. That one's parted as well. Cool. How exciting is this? All right, so we have that side done, that side done, that side done. I think we're on our last one. Yep, this is the one, folks. Oh, turned it the wrong way. Getting too excited. Now, obviously, when you're tightening up this one, your outer box is a lot weaker now. So be aware that when you're putting expansion mode on, you don't want to end
Got
up
a wobble
splitting.
on that.
Yeah, I have got a wobble. I think for this last one, I'm going to bring my tailstock up just to get it
That's
right.
exactly what I was going to say. No sense tempting fate. You've gotten so well so far on.
Especially as you've spoken about crashing and NASCAR.
Oh, no pressure, no pressure.
It's
Okay,
just a demo.
Just a demo. Like I say, don't over tighten this because you're a lot weaker now. You've got no support from internal wood because we parted it off. Now, with this last one, you have to have some caution. Because if you part that center cube off too soon with your tool, it's going to bind up on your tool. So nice and slow. Go by feel. See, can you feel anything moving? And when you see light, like I'm seeing there, stop, assess, see how much you've got to play with, and then go back to it. Don't try and do it all in one go. I can feel that cube vibrating now because it's literally just like a first tooth hanging in on the gum. Okay, so now this is where I bring in my hook tool again. I can feel the inner cube vibrating. Very nearly there. And I forgot to say that I'm roughly spinning this. It's been an average of about 1500 RPM the whole time. I've not adjusted the speed at all. Sometimes, depending on the wood, the end grain, you'd need a bit more speed to get a nice cut on it. Okay, we're good. Are we ready for the final part off?
You bet.
Okay, I'm going to come in at the top here first. In fact, no, I'm going to go at the side here because if I release at the top, you'll see it drop out, hopefully. That one. Obviously, we've got two corners to release. Okay, that one is done. Go. Oh, I just heard the click. It's always a nice click. And there we go. Now what I'll do is I'll orientate that cube so that I can get to any pieces that need carving off to allow the cube to move around freely. You can get your Dremel in there either to do any cleaning up, but if you've done your cuts properly and you've sanded up as you've gone along. There should be very little cleaning up to do.
It's brilliant, Steve, as usual.
Thank you. So now that's obviously being bound up by the chuck at the moment because the jaws are coming through there. So we'll release it away from the jaws. Now, and there's your cube rolling around and moving around in there, but it will not.
I can breathe again.
It will not fit through the holes.
Very
That
now,
makes two of us.
That
let
was
me-
That's
fantastic.
awesome, Steve.
That
Awesome.
was fantastic, fantastic. My God.
Thank you. Let me just show you here now.
That was great.
So you can now orientate this cube and poke the corners out of the hole. And you see how there's a little bit of cleaning up to do there. You can just take your knife or your chisel or even your sandpaper, and you can just clean off with the grain those edges. And that's how you just clean that off. And then you could even, if you wanted to put design on the inner box, you can push it up tight and you can work in the hole and you can put some pyrography or whatever on the inside. Now, obviously, the outer sides, I've not done any sanding. You do all the sanding as you're working each surface and each side. And but that's how you do a box in a box. Now, you can do a box inside a box, inside a box, inside a box. I've done 4. So I've done a box inside a box inside that box inside this box. So you end up with 4 cubes rolling about. And so all you do is you just go deeper and deeper with your first cuts.
I'm not nearly that ambitious.
I'm just shaking my head. Wow. Just wow. That's really great, Steve.
Good
Thanks.
job, Steve. That was excellent
Yeah,
demo.
awesome, dude.
My
Yeah,
God.
Well worth,
incredible.
well worth the
I'm-
whole program. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm glad I managed to get it
He's
done
got a hot
in
mic.
the time.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Super,
Steve.
mate.
Yeah. So there you go. I've got I got this one done as well, but it's a gnarly piece of wood. Do you see but it just goes to show, don't stop. I mean, this was what I was saying about the cracks. This has an inclusion through it. So it's got a natural crack through it. So I CA'd it, but that looks really cool. Do you know, when
Yeah,
that's
it does.
done, when I part that, this cube is pretty much ready to part off. I've just got one side. I had this ready just in case I needed to speed it up, but that's just ready to part off. That's the last side to release. And then that cube will be released then. And I'll add pyro and stuff to this to make it kind of gnarly and cool looking, industrial looking.
Nice one. Nice one.
So
Right. Yeah, can I just put in what I was saying earlier during Steve's live? That he has, I believe the video is still up. Steve has a video up there from when he first started with the drill lathe that he started with.
Yeah.
Going upwards to a couple of few years ago. This new setup is a pretty new setup, but he has got a video up there from where he first started off with the drill lathe, and
Yeah.
where he carried on from there, and it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, Steve and I have known each other for quite a few years, and
Yeah.
he's
Had
a
no
brilliant
idea.
guy.
Thanks,
I
mate.
do, Steve.
We
Steve, do
couldn't
you
tell, Wayne.
follow the inside? Steve,
Sorry,
do you ever
Sue, yeah.
inside cube?
Do I ever hollow the inside cube? You can do, yeah. You can do whatever you want. Now, obviously, if you're hollowing the inside cube, what you'd do is you'd leave all your corners. You wouldn't part it off. Don't part
Okay.
off. You'd leave all your corners connected. Get it down to the point where you can just carve off your corners and then hollow your cube so it's supported all the way around. Because if
Okay.
you part off your cube and then start hollowing, you're not going to be able to hold it. It's going to break off and you're not going to be able to hollow it out. But yes, absolutely. I saw one guy, he turned a sphere inside a tiny little sphere inside the inner cube. I've never tried that yet. I've got the Spring It tools to do that, but I've not really mastered those yet. So
What a
You just
fantastic
gave me an
demo.
idea for. You just
Thank
gave
you.
me an idea for making. You could do little picture frames with little pictures inside the cube.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, and also you
How
can
neat.
I almost got one done, but I kind of messed it up at the end. You can do wands with a cube inside the handle. So you can orientate the wand and cut it. Now, what happens is the cube is still fixed. It doesn't float because obviously you'd have to destroy the end of it. I mean, you could do it and then put a separate piece on the end of your
Right.
wand, if you know what it's
On the
so
butt.
part off on the last your last parting off would be the end of your wand, and then you'd put a sphere or something on the end. But yeah, you could do a wand or any kind of, it doesn't have to be a cube with a cube inside it. It could be any shape with a cube inside it, as long as you've got all six sides to work on.
Could you put another cube inside of that, Steve?
Yeah, like I said, the most I've done is 4 cubes inside each other. Yeah.
How big
Well
was the
done.
original cube? Is it a big cube?
It was I think it was a 6-inch cube that I started with.
Yeah. Great demo. How do you sharpen your skew? You hone it?
No, I have a Sorby Pro Edge
Okay.
with a 120 grit on it, and yeah, I use a diamond card then just to keep the burr on it. Yeah.
And I'm still back on the choo-choo train.
Okay.
What's the tolerances on the OD and ID of the coupling? Do you have something do you just guess at the tolerance, or do you?
Just
Okay,
guessed.
okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you had a.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
guessed. They're
Okay.
just a wee spigot with a relief cut at the bottom,
Okay.
so that when it pops in, it has enough movement
Yeah.
to kind
Very
of
nice. Okay.
move around. Yeah. That's still a working. I've still got to finish that. But what I'll do is I'll turn a little stack for it, and I'll then pyro the details onto it, and then I'll give it to my son, and he'll paint it and kind of make it how he wants. But that was turned on 2 axes, so it was a block of wood. I turned that way to get this, and then I flipped it and I turned it, and again using the same way as I did this, I formed that square.
Very nice.
Not
Any
so
more
bad for an old
questions?
ex-banger racer from Luton, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
You done good, Steve.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Steve, when you were
Anyone-
cutting the recess back in between the 2 squares,
Yeah.
were you supporting your cutter on the inside square?
Yeah. So if I use the outside of this one, this block. So if you can imagine, this is the internal block.
Yes.
Let me turn this. What I would do is with my skew is I'd come in at the angle of the hole and I'd rest that flat edge on the front face of the skew, and I'd bring it in as far as I could. Now, obviously, you're restricted on how far you can go in, because the heel of the skew will dig into your inner block then as it's spinning, and you could get a gouge in it. So that's why I use the angle tool. Then I go as far as I can, taking away all the meat of the wood with the skew because it's faster, and then just finish off my relief cut with the angle cut then. And I also rub, when I'm using this tool, Now, not everyone will have this tool. When I'm using this tool, I'm also following the face of the inner cube to cut that relief as well. So I'm never gouging into the internal block. So I'm keeping it flat. Now you could shape, like I said, your outer block could be a star shape. You can also make your inner block a star shape by cutting coves into this. You can do all kinds of shapes. And it's great fun. I think Ruby's, as far as I know, Ruby, if Ruby's still here, I think Ruby's done a few cubes inside cubes and stuff like that.
No, mine have mostly been spheres and stars inside of spheres.
Okay, and it's done pretty similar to that though, isn't it? I think.
Right. The biggest one I did sphere-wise has 13 spheres inside of it.
Awesome. And is that using a tool similar to the Spring It? I've got the tool here.
Right. Mine were homemade. I'll just grab that one quickly.
This is the Spring It tool. So you get these cutters you changed for different depths, and then you use a flat. Tool rest, and you work in your spheres like this.
Oh wow!
Is there a problem if you use it?
This one's got the 13 or 14 inside.
Can Dane maybe put you up on the camera? I don't think you're on the. Yeah, perfect.
There we go.
All right, yeah, I've seen that one. That's awesome. So you used a similar tool to the Spring It tool, did you? But it's a homemade.
Yeah, mine was homemade.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
And obviously, Ruby, the smaller holes you would drill all together, would you, first before you before you turned your spheres?
Well, actually, what I did was I put plugs to hold everything in place.
Right.
And then I drilled the little holes.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
Very neat.
That takes a long time to do.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I've done.
I definitely don't have the tenacity.
I've done a sphere inside an egg because my, or an egg inside a sphere, should I say, because it didn't quite end up round. But
how do you finish the inner one?
How do you
Carefully.
do the inner one?
Carefully.
Very carefully.
Did you sand it? Did you sand it to 400?
Well, of course. When you have little fingers, you can get right down in there. You know?
God, if I messed it up.
The finish was
400 is for amateurs. That's finished to 1200.
If I messed that up, I'd commit suicide.
That was very enjoyable. Very enjoyable.
That was a brilliant demo. A very well explained.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruby. Thanks.
Very good teaching.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Was there any other questions? I know Green had a question way early in the demo about holding it on the 3 corners or something. I don't know if Green wants to ask his question about that, or if his question wound up getting answered for him throughout the process.
Who?
Green. That's the name that was listed.
And what was the question? Can you remember?
Something about holding it on the 3 corners. I don't know. It was a big paragraph, and I wasn't going to write it down.
Okay, oh, it was Green Bean, was it? Her name's Rachel. If it's Green Bean,
yes,
anyhow,
it's Green Bean.
If
Green
you're
Bean.
Still there, if you're still there, you can ask the question.
She says she'll ask me later. So yeah, I'm friends with Rachel on TikTok. So she can ask me.
So
again.
are you better doing it with dry wood? Your first cube you did with wet wood, but
yeah. So it was the only log I had in the workshop. That's why I used the wet one. But yeah, you'd be better off with good dry wood for doing something like this, because obviously as it dries, it's going to warp and crack and move and stuff like that. So But they're great because you can color the inner cube, you can burn the inner cube, you can scorch the outer cube, you can use a rotary tool, and you can do embellishments and all sorts, and you can have them really looking cool.
If you ground a Allen key properly, you could cut all the way to the end of right out to the corner. Is that bad?
The only reason why I wouldn't advise that is because if you catch that tool on that corner, right up until the point that you're releasing that corner, you've got wood that you're cutting. But as soon as you release that cube, you've got three potential sides that tool could dig into and rip that inner cube. It's happened to me before, where you can just go in, even with this bigger tool, as you're going in, as soon as it releases, it can just warp just slightly, catch a tool, and you end up just destroying the whole thing. So you're better off just taking it as far as you can with the tool until you've got just the very corners, and then just take the corners away with a knife, or again with the skew's great for getting in there. I would advise any turner to get one of those little 1/4-inch skews. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from Steve's demo, but if you could highlight me, I'll show you a couple of photos that a friend in France sent me. This guy is in his late 80s, early 90s. And these are the pieces similar that he's been doing.
Yeah, I think he has a book. Does he have a book, Ruby? I think.
Well, his name is Paul Textier.
Spring.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They're absolutely amazing.
And every Christmas he sends me some of the new pieces he's been working on.
So those cube pieces, I'd say, are done very similarly to how I'm doing these, but you just take more of the cube away to form your shapes.
Yeah, and if you look at that one, you've got the cube on the outside, the sphere on the inside, and then there's a star in the very bottom.
That's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
And the thing is that when you look at that, now that you've seen this demonstration, you can understand how it's done.
Right, and the thing is, like, I've worked with Paul, and he uses a mini lathe for everything he does, and very primitive tools that he's made himself. Like, he takes files and he creates his tools from files.
Right.
Hopefully he's annealing them.
No, I doubt it. No, Paul, I doubt it. He works basically in a little square corner of a garage. And I watched
I just say that because I don't want any of the members to go and grab a file and turn it into a turning tool, because it is very, very dangerous unless the hardness is brought back on them.
Yeah.
Because they'll shatter.
I watched him one day, the whole day, and took pictures and took notes on what he was doing. And at the end of the day, and Paul only speaks French, he looked up at me and he said, "Tomorrow you use my tools and lathe and you make this." And then I spent the entire day doing something very similar.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And it's
and on his defense, I'd say that the tools that he's using are probably turned down to a really small tip. So if it does break, it's probably just like breaking the end of a screwdriver off, as opposed to, I get what you're saying, Dane, and totally don't make tools out of chisels unless you know what you're doing. But
files.
Files, I mean, as opposed to a bigger tool where a big chunk of metal is going to fly off and snap. When you're using a tiny, refined little tool and it snaps, it's going to get lost in the piece, or So yeah, I kind of get what he's doing, but I mean, the Allen key idea works brilliantly as well.
Yeah, those were the first tools that I made of my own, were all from Allen keys.
Yeah.
But no, your demo was absolutely brilliant, very well explained, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Ruby.
Indeed.
It's kind of you. It means a lot when seasoned, shall we say, seasoned demonstrators,
like a fine wine aged.
Yeah, seasoned demonstrators give you good feedback. It's always nice because you're going the right direction. That's kind of where I'm hoping
Indeed.
to go, is down the demonstration route. So yeah,
I
Barbara
think you're
Dill,
well on the
Barbara
way.
Dill is trying to get me to go over to the States and do some demo. And I said, well, if you pay me, Barbara, I'll come over and do it.
No, I think you did a brilliant demo. I really do.
Thank you.
And I'm proud of you. I like your Canadian flag too.
Yeah, that's well, we're not allowed to advertise products with these guys, so I won't do it because I stick to the rules. But he's a buddy, so I'm going to support him. So yeah,
very good. Well, folks, anybody else have any questions or comments for Steve? Because he sure did a hell of a demo for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, at
All
2
right,
o'clock
Steve.
in the morning, right?
it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I was gonna can't darn
Yeah.
anything at 3 o'clock in the morning.
But I'm not back to work until Monday, and even then I'm only working 3 days, and I've got a week off again, so I'm not too worried about catching up on
Yeah.
sleep.
Well, the beauty of it is you only got a few feet to walk to the bar, so.
Exactly. Well, it's literally right there. If I could get one of the cameras to go around and show you, I'd show off my new bar as well. But
check out, if everybody's on the Facebook page, you can see Steve's bar. He posted it there.
Well, if I get
All
over
right.
your side of the river, I'll slip by and come and check
absolutely,
it out in
anybody's
person.
welcome to come and have a pint.
Well, I can't have
Thanks,
just one
Leona.
pint, but amen.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Steve. Excellent demo, and thank you for
You're very
demonstrating
welcome.
for us.
Thanks for having me. And
Oh, you
anytime you
bet.
need a filler, give me a shout.
Right on, right on. Much appreciated.